Hi, I'm Mia Friedman and welcome to No Filter. I know it's hard to believe, but there are still some people in the world who believe that the popular culture that women like is trivial, silly, frivolous, that the books and movies and websites and businesses created by us are, by definition, lightweight and just not very serious. They dismiss us as mummy bloggers, chick lit authors, mumpreneurs, and frankly, it's bollocks. Marian Keyes is one of the most successful authors in the world. She's sold 35 million books in 35 languages, and she's done that by writing about women's lives in all their messiness. And the stories she tells and the way she tells them are hilarious and poignant and fist-pumping and so very true. She writes the words and the feelings that are inside our head, and she makes women feel seen and heard and understood. She's able to do this because, like most of us, Marian's had some bloody tough times in her own life. She's battled addiction, crippling mental illness, and it's those kind of experiences that give her writing such incredible warmth and truth. Some of my favourite books, and probably yours, were written by Marian Keyes. The first one, Watermelon, came out in 1995, followed by Lucy Sullivan is Getting Married, Rachel's Holiday, Last Chance Saloon, Sushi for Beginners, Angels, The Other Side of the Story, Anybody Out There, This Charming Man, The Brightest Star in the Sky, The Mystery of Mercy Close, The Woman Who Stole My Life, and now her latest book, The Break, about a man who asks his wife for a 6-month holiday from their marriage. I'm about halfway through it at the moment and I cannot put it down. Meeting someone you admire and respect and whose writing has influenced your life can be very disappointing. But when Marian came into Mamma Mia, she was like a rainbow in human form. I think I actually saw sunbeams radiate from her person. And that voice, oh my God. Enough from me. Sit back and listen to the very extraordinary Marian Keyes. What's funny is that I went to Wikipedia, and it says about you, among other things in the beginning. She became known worldwide for Watermelon, Lucy Sullivan is Getting Married, Rachel's Holiday, Last Chance Saloon, Anybody Out There, and This Charming Man, with themes including alcoholism, depression, addiction, cancer, bereavement, and domestic violence.
Cheery, yes. Wouldn't that draw you to a book?
And yet, that's what I thought was so funny. And yet, you are probably the best comedic novelist of all time.
Oh God, you're so nice.
Without question, your books are hilarious.
I think it's a very Irish thing, of like kind of using laughter as a survival mechanism. And it's a very personal thing. Like it's how I've got through. Life happens to us all. Painful stuff happens to us all. And you can cry for a while, but eventually you've got to laugh about it. And I have to say, disastrous stories are the funniest ones in retrospect. It's really great when you've got enough distance on that really humiliating episode with the ex-boyfriend to be able to make it into a hilarious story with you as the starring person in it.
It requires that distance though, doesn't it?
Oh my God, it does. Yeah. But I suppose anything painful is a process.
Yeah.
And eventually most things become okay.
You describe yourself as an extreme introvert.
Yes.
Tell me about that. I also do. But it's really funny watching you because you've been in the office for all of 10 minutes. You've given out hugs and compliments. You just radiate this extremely extroverted energy.
Well, first of all, I'm so blown away to be here. Also, the energy of this place, I love it. It's so full of women.
Yeah.
And even in your bathroom, you have all these like lovely hand creams and then a fabulous heated brush.
Yes.
I was so excited.
Free tampons.
Yes, I was so excited to see such a feminine friendly place. And also people... Okay, I am an introvert, but I'm also warm. I'm an introvert who likes people. What I mean is, I'm good on one-to-ones or in small groups. I'm just not good in big groups. And so long as I have recovery time, I can do it. Because, the thing is, like, I love people. I can't do it for extended periods of time.
Same.
And also, I like when we talk about the serious stuff immediately. You know, I do not want to know about what route a person took to get to a place. You know, that doesn't interest me in the slightest. I want to get down to the nitty gritty immediately. I want to tell you my feelings and I want to know yours.
Yes.
And then I can do it.
So how does the act of being on tour to promote your book, how do you pace yourself through that?
I mean, I suppose I deal with it in that I know it's only for a certain amount of time. I also keep reminding myself how very fortunate I am, because I have done events where I have sat there like with the tumbleweed blown, like nobody has come. So it's so...
You really?
Oh, completely. Yeah, in fact, there was a fabulous one where like... Not only was there about 4 people in the audience, but one of them was the mother of my ex-boyfriend. And it was a relationship that had ended incredibly acrimoniously. And the shame of her witnessing my shame. And of course she would have gone back and gleefully, well, no, she was a lovely woman in fairness. She mightn't have gleefully related how awful it was. But yeah, but it would have got back to him. So yeah, so I'm always grateful when people come. But yeah, I suppose in the downtime then I don't speak. You know, I travel with my husband, and he did a personality test, and he was told he was a shy extrovert. Now,
Yes.
I'm not sure I believe him. I think he's just another introvert who drinks, you know, and so when like an introvert gets drunk, they can be very chatty.
Very true.
So I think, yeah, there was confusion there. And I have a lovely publicist who is also an introvert. So the 3 of us, we are like mutes when we're not with other people. So
that's your recharging time.
Yeah. And also, but simply, you know, the gratitude carries me a long way.
I wanted to talk about gratitude in a minute, but first you talked about shame, and I wanted to get straight to shame. And you talk about shame being a very Irish trait, and particularly I wanted to ask you how that particularly affects women.
Oh, I mean, in Ireland... I mean, I suppose any country that is steeped in Catholicism, it's very hard to be a sexual woman. You can't be. You know, you are a Madonna or a whore. There's no place for us to be women with regular sexual appetites, the way that men have. And I was brought up very much with that dichotomy, and you know, told that, you know, my virginity was a precious thing and it should be retained until marriage. But like, it wasn't just the sexual thing.
How did you go with that?
Well, badly, you know, because I'm a human. But also there was loads of other shames put on me, like, you know, that women don't speak up. Women put themselves last. Women don't have opinions. Women don't challenge the patriarchy in any way. And that was really difficult for me because I could see so much that was wrong. And so I've kind of had the civil war going on in me for most of my life, where I would speak my truth and then the rush of shame that I would feel subsequently would almost destroy me. And even like the stuff that I was told about Catholicism, when they do this thing called your first confession, where you sit in a little wooden box in the dark and tell your...
With a man.
With a man. It's so wrong. But like, when we came back to our classrooms afterwards, we were told, don't you feel so light? Don't you feel so free? And I thought, no, I don't. This is codswallop. This is absolute nonsense. But whenever I said that, I got into so much trouble. I was told you can't say that. So, yeah. So shame is it's deep in me and it's easy to shame me. But I've got an awful lot stronger in the last couple of years, especially, you know, there's a lot going on politically in Ireland where you have to kind of speak up. You know, it's impossible to sit on the fence if you care about women's rights, or if you care about, we had a referendum a couple of years ago for same-sex marriage. Like, I couldn't say nothing, but like, I got a lot of hate.
Did you?
Oh my God, completely.
Because I was going to say, what how would people shame you? What would they shame you for?
Well, for having an opinion at all.
Like, what's this 2-bit chick-lit lady author?
Totally.
What does she know?
Absolutely. Yes, this fluffy half-wit who writes these saccharine pink airport novels. What would she know about anything? No, definitely I got that. And then there was all that stuff about, do you not care about families and the terrible things that are going to happen if these gays are allowed to get married and have families like us normal people? Yeah, so there was an awful lot of that as well. But like the referendum passed, and
what was that like? That must have been...
Oh my God, it was utterly joyous. It was just beyond wonderful. And to feel like that the country had come so far in such a short time. Like we were the first country in the world to legalise same-sex marriage by the popular vote.
Astonishing for us.
Yes.
Because Australia sees itself as so progressive.
Yeah.
And in areas like reproductive rights and abortion, we are compared to America, compared to Ireland.
Yeah.
And yet... we are on one of the last, I think we are the last Western democracy that has not legalised marriage equality.
Yeah.
And the person who made the Irish, or who headed up the Irish campaign, Tiernan Brady, is now in Australia working on our campaign, and he's the most delightful man.
Yes.
And so wise.
Yes. And the wonderful thing is that, like, I can report from Ireland and say that, like, the society has not broken down. People are not having orgies left, right and centre. Life has carried on in the most normal way. Like, nothing terrible. All the awful prophecies that the no campaigners were going on with, none of them came true. It's all been lovely.
And yet, a woman who has been raped in Ireland cannot seek an abortion. Is that correct?
That is right. A woman who has been raped and who has an abortion faces 14 years in jail. She will get longer in prison than her rapist.
What?
I know, it's beyond belief. Like, victims of incest can't have an abortion. Women carrying babies with fatal fetal abnormalities, they have to carry to term. It's beyond a disgrace. If an Irish woman needs an abortion, she has to travel to the UK or to Holland or to any country nearby. And, there's enormous expense involved in that travel. But there's also, like, women have died making the journey back. Like, it's barbaric. Saudi Arabia has abortion and Ireland doesn't.
Can you explain that?
I mean, it is very much to do with that toxic Catholic attitude to women. Like, it's almost to punish women for having sex in the first place.
That's exactly. You can't see any other way to describe it.
No. And like, the odd person will say, okay, in the case of rape, they can have an abortion. So that means that they don't actually have a problem with abortion. They have a problem with the way the baby was conceived. So if a baby was conceived in a pleasureful way, then no abortion for them. So we're having a referendum sometime next year in 2018. But it's the campaign has been so bitter already. I mean, so bitter. And what is interesting is, like, you also mentioned, that Australia has far more liberal laws than the United States. I mean, I'm very, very worried about what's going on with the Christian right in Trump's America. Like, women's reproductive rights are definitely under attack there. And I think that in, the developed world, we think that once we get rights, that they can't be taken away from us. I think we have to be very vigilant that, they're not always going to be there. We have to be careful to not have those rights sneakily removed. And I am so glad that things are so good here in Australia for women.
At the moment.
Like,
you're right.
But
we must away.
We must be constantly vigilant.
We must.
Because there's an awful lot of money going into the campaign to roll back reproductive rights in the US.
And you can't look at that as any other way than men
wanting to control women.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely, utterly and totally.
Right, well, that's cheery.
Yeah, I know. Yes, but it's good to talk about it. It's important to discuss it. Yeah, it is.
And you've been very active with the repeal the 8th.
Yes.
What's the 8th?
The 8th is the 8th Amendment to the Irish Constitution. It was voted in by a huge majority in 1983, whereby the woman was given the same value as the fetus she was carrying. So a woman has to be in danger of imminent death before she can have an abortion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that puts an adult woman's life on the same frame as some cells.
The very thing. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it beggars belief. It really does.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully, and I'm hopeful that Ireland is a much more compassionate country now, and that, you know, that women will be given rights over their own bodies and treated as first-class citizens.
Or equal citizens.
Yes, exactly.
That.
Yes, that would be lovely.
You describe yourself as a calm feminist. What do you mean by that when you say calm feminist?
Well, because a way of shutting down feminists is to fling the word shrill at them.
So true.
Yeah, the minute you hear the word shrill, people shut off. And I know the annoying thing is actually that my voice is quite squeaky. I wish I had a deeper, more important sounding voice, but sadly I don't. And as I get more passionate about things, it goes even a couple of octaves higher. But yeah, the word shrill is just one of those words that is so derogatory that it automatically invalidates anything that a feminist says. So I try
anything a woman says. I mean, Hillary Clinton was called shrill.
I know. I mean, the words that were used about her, they were disgraceful.
It's funny, when people want to shut me down, they will refer to me as a mummy blogger.
Oh.
Because I have broadband and a uterus.
Oh God!
In your world, in the literary world, you're called what? A chicklet?
Chicklet. Yeah.
Tell me about that description and why it's so pernicious.
It's because I'm a woman who writes books about women that mostly women read. And I'm sorry to make things serious again, but it's just another way of perpetuating the patriarchy. If you use the things that women enjoy and give them a kind of a derogatory or a simplifying title, it makes women feel ashamed of the things they enjoy. And as a result, they feel silly and less confident, so they're less likely to ask for more money or a promotion or, better sentences for, like, longer sentences for rapists. And, I know that, like, cricket is very big in Australia.
Yeah.
And, like, looked at it from the outside, it's a bunch of men standing around in a field with planks of wood and a ball. It's not that.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, but it's given the same status as hard news. Like in Ireland and the UK, it's football. It's given massive coverage in the newspapers and it's given massive coverage on the telly. It's treated like an important thing, as important as politics, whereas women's stuff is relegated to the fluffy pink pages on the weekend supplement. And it is simply another way of making women feel less than. And as a result, those who have more power and money, which happens to be men, that's how they hold on to it. And people get very cross with me when I say that. But it's the truth.
You've been told before to just use less humour in your books and then you'll be taken more seriously.
Yes, I have, yes. Yeah, well-meaning people have said, you're quite a good writer, they say sometimes. But, like, knock off the humour. And, you could be taken seriously. And I feel like, I want to write funny books. I want to make people laugh. And I don't know any other way to tell a story. And I think, I write about painful stuff, which is real. And the way that it's readable is by using humour. So, like, the humour for me is non-negotiable. And I mean, it was the way I was brought up. I think I wouldn't know how not to
Tell me about your family.
Right. Well, I love my family. I'm the eldest of 5. I've 2 brothers. I've 2 sisters. They're all big personalities. My mother is a massive personality. My dad was one, but he has Alzheimer's now. But in his way, he's still with us. You know, we're actually very lucky in that a lot of Alzheimer's sufferers get very angry and violent. He isn't. He's adorable. He's actually far nicer now than he used to be. Because he used to be really stressed and cranky, you know, and a very kind of old-fashioned shouty dad. But now he loves us all. He keeps telling us we're beautiful. He asks my mother to marry him most days. I know, it's lovely, isn't it? And he keeps telling people how much he loves her. And
does he still live at home with her?
He does. And she's amazing. Like, she takes great care of him, and she's immensely patient and loving with him. But she has changed. Like, she takes time out for herself. She goes out, you know, she plays bridge, she goes shopping, she does stuff, she sees people, she has lunch, because she knows that if she doesn't have that time for herself, she won't be able to be patient with him. And then when she is with him, she's so lovely. But
so she's not a martyr.
She's not a martyr anymore. And she was brought up to be the proper Irish mammy martyr, you know, who was always invisible and in the background and who did everything. No, she's blossomed.
And she puts the oxygen mask on herself because she knows she can't take care of your dad.
Exactly. That's such a great analogy. Exactly. She has become a strong, independent person who has learned how to navigate the world because she knows it's the only way she can fulfill her duties in the rest of her life. But every Friday we go over to see her, and loads of us come, you know, nieces and nephews, and sometimes they bring school friends, and it's rowdy, it's messy. There are 4 rooms on the go. The telly is on in every single room.
Tell me about the magnums.
Oh, the magnums. See, my mother, she has a freezer full of magnums. Although I have to say, in Australia, my God, you have this red velvet magnum.
Do.
I cannot wait to sample it. I'm under instructions from the people of Ireland to sample it and do a serious report.
Yeah.
And Marian Keyes will be mortified.
You have to make a short film about it.
Oh yes, I will make a short film.
Your
I will.
YouTube channel,
yes,
which I've recently discovered is my favourite thing to watch ever.
You're so
and
lovely.
You say you're not a vlogger. You decided you're going to make short films.
Yes, vlogging sounds too modern and cool for me. I'm old school. I'm a short film kind of a person. But Marian Keyes has a freezer full of magnums, and just basically whatever flavour you want, she will burrow in through the ice and get it for you. But no red velvets for her. She will be really, really ashamed.
Up next, more with Marian. But first, a message from our sponsor. The Walsh family, which is loosely based on your family, which has 5 sisters and has featured in how many of your books?
5. I've done all 5 sisters
all 5
now.
Sisters.
Yeah.
Now, the most recent book, The Break, I heard you say that was going to be the Walsh family.
It was.
And it was going to be Claire's book.
It was.
What happened? That was originally your plan.
It was. Claire and Adam are the couple in my first book, Watermelon. And I thought, people are always saying, can we revisit the Walshes? So I thought, okay, I don't really believe in sequels, but I'll try. So I thought the whole concept of a break, them, taking 6 months out of their marriage, if I could revisit them 21 years later and see how they're getting on. So I started writing it, and I spent about 6 months on it. And you know what, Mia? I couldn't do it. I couldn't go in there and break them up. It was too sad. It's pathetic, but they were too real to me. And I felt like they'd gone through enough to get together in the first book that it just felt cruel. So I had to abandon it. Now, I haven't entirely abandoned the idea of Walsh books in the future, maybe kind of all the sisters together. But that particular one, I was unable to do it. I'm a sap, clearly.
Where are those characters? Where do they exist in your life, all the characters from your past books?
They're all happy. In my mind, they all went through enough in the book, and now they're kind of they're skating They're good. Things are nice for them. They learnt a lot through the book, and they're equipped to go forward with their lives now. So that's kind of why I don't like the idea of sequels, because with a sequel, something bad has to happen or there's no story.
Yeah. You have to go and rummage around in their lives.
You do, and you kind of, stir things up, create chaos for a while. And even though, like, I am a sap who does always believe in the happy ending, I still don't like the idea of distressing them. They're good, they're grand where they are.
Yeah. So you decided it was going to be about Amy.
Yeah, I created an entirely new character with a new family, and it's a lovely family as well. It's a big, messy family.
It makes me want to be part of a big family, and I have such a sense of longing when I read your books. For that idea of a big, messy family.
Yeah.
It just seems so much fun.
It is so much fun, but the thing is, we can create our own family. I think that's the lovely thing about modern life, is that our friends become our family, and our friends' kids become sort of surrogate kids of ours. And I took the energy of my family on a Friday and gave it to Amy's family, the O'Connells, and just that mayhem and people being so rude to each other and nobody taking offence, because that's what my family is like. Like, if somebody is boring you, if you're not having the fun you want from a conversation, you simply pick up your plate and you move to another room and nobody minds. Like, it's just what you do. Mid-sentence, a person is off. Right, bye, grand. We'll manage without you. We'll carry on here.
I love that so much. You talk about having no boundaries.
Yes.
And as a writer and a communicator and someone in the public eye and an author, I imagine fiction gives you some protection and gives the people around you some protection.
Yeah.
In terms of their lives and conversations you've had and things that have happened to them.
Yeah.
But how do you manage that? Because I know that I don't write fiction, but I've often, the same as you, I don't have boundaries, and that's what gets me into trouble, when I don't know what information belongs to me and what doesn't belong to me.
Yes, that's such a good point. And I mean, I am more careful with my family than it might seem, because obviously I've made the decision to be in the public eye and they haven't. So I check things. Like, I checked with my mother and with the rest of them that it was okay to talk about Dad's Alzheimer's. And we had got to a point as a family
where the character in this book has Alzheimer's.
Yeah, and my dad does. So, and it had become normalised enough for us by then. Like, in the early days, it was really frightening. And we were angry. I mean, I was very angry. So I have to make sure it's okay with them. But with me personally...
How do you do that? Do you do that at Friday dinner? Do you send around a group email?
At Friday dinner,
group?
Yeah. At Friday, we do have a WhatsApp group, yeah. But I suppose my mother is the one whose opinion matters the most. So I will always sit down and talk to her and say, is it okay? Or if a big interview is coming up, we kind of say, where are we at as a family? Can I talk about that? But with my own personal stuff, I don't really have any boundaries, because I suppose I feel like I have such a connection with my readers. I don't want secrets. And, I went through an awful spell of kind of profoundly horrible, bad mental health starting in 2009. And I used to write a monthly newsletter, and I was unable to. And I felt I owed my friends an explanation for why I wasn't doing it. And, I did a kind of a 3-sentence thing saying, I'm really sorry, but I'm suffering from depression. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't concentrate. I'll be back to you as soon as I can. And I wasn't intending it for it to be a massive big deal, but it became a big deal. And
in what way did it become a big deal?
It was like it was in all the papers in Ireland, and people were writing opinion pieces. And
we wrote about it on Mamma Mia. I remember reading that because I subscribed to your newsletter, and reading that, and with Lana, who was the editor of Mamma Mia at the time, and we were both just heartbroken.
Oh,
heartbroken for you. Oh God, we're not going to get our newsletter. Isn't that annoying? No,
that's so kind.
Heartbroken for you.
That is so kind. And what I subsequently discovered was a lot of people felt it personally.
Yeah.
And what also was nice subsequently was to discover that a lot of people were grateful.
Yes.
You know, they thought, like, if somebody like her, who has a lovely job and, you know, has a lovely family and all of those things, if she can have those horrible feelings, then it's okay for us. And it sort of opened a discussion that, I mean, there's still such a stigma attached to depression. But I'm hoping that it's got easier for people. But I never thought of hiding it, because I sort of thought it wasn't like I made it, it wasn't my fault, I felt. You know, I mean, I know guilt is a huge part of depression and shame, exactly.
Yeah.
But I sort of felt I can't keep people in the dark about it. And I'm glad now that I did. I mean, I flip-flopped between wishing I had and wishing I hadn't. And now I think it's just part of my story. And I suppose the one thing I can offer is that I got better, you know, eventually. And it took time, and it took all kinds of things not working. And I am a different kind of person now. But I can tell people now who are in the horrors, thinking that they're never, ever going to get out of it, that I felt that way. I thought I was going to be like that forever if I survived. And I feel well today. I feel well and grateful. I can function. You know, I can take pleasure and joy in things. So it was worth it in the end. And I mean, God only knows what's going to happen to me subsequently, because life is so unpredictable. You know, I really thought I would get to a certain age and everything would be controllable and everything would be peaceful and steady and calm. Life absolutely isn't like that at all. Things blow up in my face in the most unexpected ways still. And I think to communicate that, I suppose it helps me, because people give it back to me and they say, that happened to me too.
Yep.
And I hate having secrets. I think that's a big part of it. I don't want to be out doing interviews and thinking, oh my good God, don't ask me that particular question, because I'm not going to be able to dissemble. I would far rather all my skeletons were out of the cupboard and dancing, you know, rather than having areas where I was just, where I'm uncomfortable or I'm afraid.
What, you know, back to that period that you had, and I'm one of the people that said that would say thank you for writing about that, because I experienced a terrible episode of anxiety.
You poor thing.
When was it? I don't know, around 2012 maybe. And I had you in my mind as someone who would also just fallen off the face of the earth.
Yes.
And it is such a gift, I think, when women in the public eye share, or any woman really, it doesn't even have to be in the public eye, but share the struggles. Because, like, look, Marian Keyes, incredible author and beautiful woman, and she's this and she's successful. And it's like, I'm mad in the head, I've lost it.
Yes.
And I felt the same way. But I was going to ask you, what got you through that period? What, because everyone's going to want to know, and I know the answer, but I wanted to hear it from you.
Okay, well, I tried everything. I mean, I would have stood on my head in a bucket of blue paint if you know, I would have tried anything. And like, I mean, I had 2 spells in a psychiatric hospital, which is not for the faint-hearted.
Did that help?
Do you know, it didn't. It didn't. It just made me more frightened, because I wanted to be at home. I tried every kind of medication that they recommended, and various combinations. None of them really helped either. I tried meditation, mindfulness, cognitive behavioural therapy. I saw a therapist who was a wonderful help to me and who I still see. In fact, she was probably the one kind of steadying influence through it all. I mean, I stayed in bed a lot of the time. I mean, I tried doing those things they say, getting out in the air and exercising, but sometimes it was just too frightening. Then
people don't think about depression as being
fearful.
So
exactly.
Isn't that anxiety? Because that's what I had. I was terrified.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think anxiety and fear are slightly different. They're both horrible.
Hideous.
Yeah. And And as you say, people expect depression to be sort of a sadness
Yeah.
or a numbness. No,
a flatness.
Yeah, a flatness. No, everything in me was heightened. My mind was racing. Like my mind was going really, really, really fast with fear the whole time. Then, out of the blue, I discovered baking. Now, that was something I was never domesticated. I was never any good at that sort of thing. I didn't grow up with it. Marian Keyes is not that way inclined.
She's a Magnum girl.
She is completely. If it's ready-made, it's in her freezer. And there was something beautiful about, because it was slow and it was meditative and there was something magical about it. And the idea of sort of feeding people became a primal sort of a nourishing thing, although it was mostly myself I fed, which was not good either.
How did you start? Did you just wander into the kitchen one day? Was it the logical, contained nature of a recipe to follow?
I had a friend and her birthday was coming, and suddenly I said, I'm going to bake you a cake, and I don't know where it came from. It was a total bolt from the blue, and I fell in love, and it gave me a structure. And it lasted for about 18 months. And then it sort of, I suppose I'd probably got through the worst of stuff by then. And then I started upcycling furniture for a while. And that was also, again, it's very creative and it's
colourful. Can you explain what upcycling means?
Oh, sorry. Right.
I've heard you talking about banjoing, which is my new favourite word.
Okay. Well, banjo is an Irish word, which means to break something. Well, like, you say, oh my God, I'm banjoed. That would mean you had a bad hangover, or like, banjoed me knee means like you hurt your knee, or like, oh no, he's after banjoing that radio. It's broken. And the whole thing about upcycling, from what I could see, is you take a piece of old furniture and then you paint it lovely colours and then you sand it and make it look like it's been sitting in the sun in a beach house in the Hamptons for 1,000 years. So when I was sanding it, I was thinking, I'm banjoing this. I'm actually making it worse than it was. So I started banjoing furniture. And that was such a pleasure as well. And because I painted things pink and silver, and, I had pink and silver dressing tables, and then I ran out of furniture, so I stole my mother's coffee tables, and she let me because I was mad in the head. And I'm so delighted you used that phrase.
Yeah,
she was like, oh, go on, let her have the bloody coffee tables. She's mad in the head. If she's painting stuff, at least she won't be trying to top herself. And that lasted for a while as well. But, fundamentally and ultimately, it was the passage of time. And anyone out there who is finding that nothing is working, wait it out. This is going to sound flippant and I don't mean it to be. I am so glad I didn't kill myself. I'm so glad that I broke time down into half-hour segments and said I won't kill myself for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll see how I'm doing. So as well as the baking, the banjoing and the passage of time, I watched a lot of telly. Like, telly was my saviour, and it still is. I watch a lot of subtitled Scandinavian, like Swedish, Norwegian, Icelandic stuff. I don't think it's kind of made its way here so much.
No, some of it has. The Bridge.
The Bridge. Oh, the Bridge.
I haven't watched it, but people are obsessed with that show.
Oh, it's lovely. And even the sound of Swedish being spoken, I don't know, it was like vitamin B on my nerves. It's like it was a lovely,
soothing,
calm, really genuinely soothing. And watching these lives in these faraway cold countries made me feel better. So I would say, tell someone how bad you're feeling.
Yep.
Because when I was in the beginnings of it, I really thought I was the only person who had ever felt like that. And that seems to be part of the condition, the isolation.
So isolating, yeah.
And also, if you tell someone, it gets past the shame, because there's an awful lot of shame in thinking, oh my God, I am mentally ill.
Yeah.
It's a horrible, horrible realisation, because we think it only happens to failures, but it doesn't. It's amongst us. Like, we're all on a sliding scale of wellness, and some days I'm better than others, and some days I am still not good. So talk to me. Try everything that's recommend it. But also, if you find something isn't working, please stop. Because I tried mindfulness and it actually made me worse. You know, because it was the being with myself in a slowed down way. It became, my fears became overwhelming.
That's my nightmare.
Yeah.
Mine was actually triggered by going to a health retreat and having no technology and nothing, depriving myself of all of that stuff. And I guess being mindful. And that also sent me into a spin.
Yeah, to have none of our normal
crutches and distractions.
Exactly, is not always a good thing. Actually, and I found Twitter a great help. I started in 2012 and suddenly, because I couldn't really leave the house at that stage, but I was able to communicate. And that was back in the day before it got really angry. And all these funny people followed
were trying to
me.
make each other laugh.
And, you know, the dogs videos. I mean, I love that. Or babies videos. I love them. You know, like, have you seen that little video of the little baby girl who puts on glasses for the first time and suddenly she can see, oh my God, you have to look at it. Oh, like, I wept buckets, but in a really lovely way, a really healing way. So try everything, but if it's not working for you, stop it immediately. One other thing, audio stuff. I stopped being able to read. I couldn't focus on the words, but listening to things, listening to podcasts and to audiobooks was very, very helpful.
Because you can't concentrate, but you can just let the words wash over you.
The words did, the work was done for me by somebody else. Yeah, and what's the word? Wait it out. That is the thing I'm begging people to do. Wait it out. For most of us, it eventually gets better.
Were you scared you'd never be able to write again?
I was certain of it. Yeah.
Or was that the least of your worries? Because writing, I imagine, for you is a pleasure, and it's when you feel.
But you're right, it was the least of my worries. When it first hit, I just thought, I don't care. And I had a book coming out, and I was due to go on a book tour of the US, and I cancelled it without any guilt for the first time ever, because I'm such a people pleaser. I hate saying no, and I want to be the person who can do everything. And I just thought, that's it. That part of my life is over. If I ever survive this, I'm going to live a very small, peaceful little life, you know, maybe with chickens, I don't know. But you're right, the thought of a career, you know, was so not important. You're right, that like I really, really, really didn't care. And I had a contract for, 2 more books.
Do you write one every year, 2 years, year?
It's every 2 years now, and in fact this particular one took 3 years.
Well, but that's because they're twice as thick as they used to be.
Yeah, that's true. And it is that it is that Irish thing of why use one word when 20 will do. But I like the whole thing of writing. I just didn't think I'd ever be able to do it again, and it was such a pleasure.
How did you start writing again?
Bits and pieces, like and also I suppose the book that I wrote kind of when I was in the thick of the things was The Mystery of Mercy Close, which is about a woman going through depression, and there was something almost defiant in the way I wrote it.
It felt different to your other books.
Yeah, it was angry, I think, because I felt that nobody knew what depression was really like. All the things I had read about kind of staring at, tears, like at raindrops running down a window, it was nothing like that for me. So I wanted to write about the sense of dislocation and the feeling of strangeness and not belonging. And it's the only book I have used as catharsis. Every other book I've written from a position of distance. No matter what I've written about, I'm not going through it at the time. With The Mystery of Mercy Close, I was going through it. I went through it with Helen.
That's why it reads differently.
So that is why it's different, because I was in it. And I'm not always sure that's healthy, but it's how it was.
Yeah.
And so, I've slowed down. I was much more productive before all of this. But the fact that I can still write and that I can still travel and talk, I really thought I honest to God thought I'd never be able to do it again.
Do you have to do certain things when you're travelling to protect your mental health?
Yeah, I took time before I started work to kind of go off and sleep at funny times, because I knew I wouldn't be able to talk coherently, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do the public aspect of my job. And I was really happy to do that. Like I did it on my own dime, and I went to a lovely place in the Walgan Valley. Oh my God, it was so lovely, and saw kangaroos and saw one wombat and walked in the trees, and and that was necessary, and I knew I had to do that. I couldn't just arrive, get off a plane and start being the public face of me. And when I go home, it'll be the same. I'll kind of be quiet.
It's like
for a while.
re-entry period.
It is. It very much is.
To acclimatise.
Yeah, and to know my limitations is a great thing. And it's something I never liked about myself. I wanted to be Superwoman, and I'm not. Nobody is. Nobody is. Exactly.
As you said, I'm going to quote you back to you. We all need to stop comparing our insides to everyone else's outsides.
Exactly.
You've got to put that on a T-shirt, Marian, because I'll buy the shit out of it.
Okay. Because it's true, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, everybody else seems to have it so together. They're skinny, they're fabulous, they're articulate, they're professional, they're successful.
Their breakfasts look attractive on Instagram.
Oh my God, exactly. And you're thinking, how can I ever be them? I will never be them.
No.
But they're not them either. They're only them some of the time.
You're travelling with your husband, who I was talking to before, and he films your videos.
The short films.
The short films. And I said to him, are you self-taught? And he said, well, yes, actually I am.
Yeah.
So I said, I thought you might. You're very good. Like, it's done with, even the editing is just done with such affection. I can't even explain that.
That is such a beautiful thing to say, and you're right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think he's great.
Yeah,
because he puts in stuff that I don't know he's going to put in.
It's really thoughtful.
Yeah, it is. And when I get words wrong, he'll do a little text to kind of correct it. And I feel so lucky that it's me and him doing it together, because we get each other. Like He's wonderful, and it's lovely. Thank you for saying that, because I couldn't do this without him, and he never really gets the credit he deserves, I feel. And people are always getting his name wrong. His name is Tony, but he's called Tom or John or Jeff. Himself, yeah. And thank you for that. I'm so delighted.
Yeah, I was so delighted to meet him, and he's very handsome.
Oh, you're lovely.
You're a very attractive couple.
Oh God, you're lovely. Thank you so much.
How long have you been together, and how did you meet?
We met because my beloved friend Suzanne, who is almost a sister to me, we were living together in London, and Suzanne worked with him, and they had a very kind of rowdy workplace, where like everybody went for drinks for every occasion. So the first time I met my husband was at his 30th birthday, because Suzanne had been invited, and being Irish, we were living in London. When one Irish person was invited to something, 27 of us would arrive, with one can of warm Heineken.
Like the Aussies.
Yes, exactly. And so that was the first time I met him, but we didn't speak. I saw him, I thought, God, he's lovely. But it was kind of a couple of years later, I'd been through rehab for alcoholism, and we reconnected as friends. So it was a very kind of an innocent courtship, and it was nothing like anything I'd had previously, because I'd gone very much for the bad boys, the ones who say they'll call and who won't, the ones who disappear for 4 days and you think it's fabulous. And
we all have to do that. That's the 20s. That's our 20s,
the rites of passage, exactly. And then he was so different, because he was reliable. I was really, really suspicious. And also I was thinking, can I live with this? Is it too boring? No, it's not boring. It's lovely. But he had a really good job. Like, he's the brainy one, and I had a crappy job. And then kind of everything changed, and I got published, and so I needed someone to do all the admin and stuff. And I mean, I laugh and say, there he is with the brain the size of a planet, having to kind of book my hair appointments and stuff. But he does it, you know, and we just, God, I have to touch wood, you know, we seem to work very well as a team. But, you know, I'm going to be smited by the god of smug women.
Well, you wrote the book, The Break, about this woman who has this very happy marriage. It's her second. And her husband just announces one morning that he needs a 6-month sabbatical from their marriage.
Yes.
Were you articulating your greatest fear?
I was. And funny enough, like the book is about, he's a nice man in the book. He's not one of these heartless, cruel fools who suddenly thinks, I don't care, I'm going to run off and buy a red Ferrari and find some, you know, he's not like that. He's a decent man, he's tormented and he still loves Amy, the wife, and it kills him to hurt her.
But it doesn't kill him enough that he doesn't go.
Exactly.
She begs him and he still goes.
Yes. And the thing is, after I was really unwell, kind of both my life and Tony's life, it fell off a cliff, you know. We suddenly stopped touring, we had no work, you know, and he found his salvation through climbing, you know. So he got more and more climby. And
like actually climbing mountains and
climbing cliff faces, like hammering like metal things into cliff faces and stuff.
Couldn't he have just started with a walk around the block or something? Like
he did start with that, but it escalated
quickly.
It got out of control very quickly, yeah. And so he does go away, you know, for periods of time.
How long?
Well, you know, like no more than like 2 weeks. But even while he's gone, you know, I'm always very interested to know like how many women are in the group, and I'm always happy to hear that there are none. And
even when there actually were.
Yeah, exactly. And so like last Christmas he went away to climb Mount Kenya, and we were going to be out of phone contact. Yeah, for the entire time. He was able to talk to me when he landed in Nairobi, and that was going to be the last call. So I was like very much, so how many are in the group? And he goes, 2 and the guide. And I said, are any of them any women? And he goes, yeah, the guide. And I thought, oh my God, no. She's going to be really young. She's going to be really strong. She's going to be really fit. And then my final question before we got cut off was, what nationality is she? And he goes, Kenyan. And then click, nah. And I thought, oh my God, you know, she's going to be one of these fabulous Maasai girls. She's going to be so beautiful and slender and strong, and they're going to bond together on the mountainside. And, you know, because like they are very bonded, like because they're dependent, very intense and intimate, because they're holding each other by ropes, you know. And I lost my reason, you know, I lost my mind, and you know. I went over to talk to Marian Keyes and also my sister who was home from New York, and they were no help. They were like, well, you know, Marian Keyes, who talks like this, goes, well, he does love them mountains, I suppose, and he could run off with the girl and he'd be living his best life. And they had me convinced that he was going to open a travel agency for adventure seekers in Kenya, that he'd never come back. Like, I was really, really, really convinced that, because I am still prone.
This is just this Christmas past.
Yeah.
So you'd already finished writing the book.
Yeah, I was just putting the finishing touches to it, and I was already planning how I was going to have to spin this in the public eye, and how I'd have to pretend to do that thing that they all say, you know, that, oh, we're still great friends, you know, we still love each other, we're the best of friends, and we wish each other well. And, you know, and I'd be sitting there going, and, you know, it's wonderful for him out there in Nairobi, and I'm so happy for him that he's living his life in the mountains, you know, loving life, living his best life. Yeah, just the utter mortification of the whole bloody thing, you know. Anyway, he came back, and it turned out that the other person on the tour was also a woman. So he'd been off up the mountain with 2 women's.
So did you get angry with him for the imaginary affair and imaginary life that you thought he'd gone off to lead?
I did. I was absolutely bloody raging. I went through the whole thing. You know, I went through the grief, I went through the depression, and then I went through the rage. And so by the time he came home, I was absolutely livid. And I was walking around the house like flinging things at him and saying, you needn't bother have coming back. I'm fine. You know, I'm grand. I've moved on. You know, I've developed a new life for myself. Yeah, the whole thing. But now it's grand. It's grand. He went away again this summer, and, you know, it's okay.
When one part of a couple, you guys have been together how long?
22 years.
22
yeah.
The 3 years when you were really ill, whether it's physical illness or mental illness, takes a huge toll.
It does.
On a couple. My husband had chronic fatigue for 2 years.
Oh my
when we
God,
were
that's
together.
awful.
And it was awful. And we actually separated not long after that for a while.
Yes.
2 years and we got back together. So we had a
I'm
proper
glad.
break. We really did.
Yes.
And now we work together. We're co-founders in the business.
Oh God, that's wonderful.
So now we work together like you and your husband.
Yeah.
But how did you navigate that in your relationship? How did he get through that?
I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible for both of us. But like for him, the woman he had married had completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And the life that we had been living stopped really abruptly. So we were together, but not really communicating. Like we lived in the same house, but he had no idea what to do with me because I didn't know what to do with me. But honestly, that's when he started the whole mountaineering thing, and I do think, and he says it, it's his saviour. He can show up for the rest of his life now, even now, but he needs that. He needs that time out in the mountains to be able to be present for me. But it was what saved him, because both of us were in this fog of not recognising each other and not knowing what to do. And it was a really, really unpleasant time. And like we didn't separate physically, but we separated emotionally.
Absolutely.
Like we were like 1,000 miles from each other. We had no idea who the other person was. And I think, I feel very lucky that we both stayed, because I wanted him to leave. I thought, I can't bear the guilt of him.
Of his life just coming to an abrupt end like yours
and
had.
I can't bear feeling that I am responsible for his happiness and unable to provide it. And, maybe he wanted to leave as well. But like he did say one day to me, he said, I cannot leave you like this. So it was tough. Like we've been through.
You have to get better before I leave you.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of pretty much the message, And like it was so funny because we had always been so happy, and suddenly we very much weren't. And I'm so happy your story is that you got back together, because me and him, we are very connected again. But when you're with a person, you go through many different relationships.
Life blows up in your face, doesn't it?
It does. And you have got to find a new way of coping with those new circumstances.
Which is exactly what all of your books are. I love the way that they do end in a hopeful way.
Thank you for saying that. Hopeful. Yes.
And they're not happily ever after, but they are hopeful.
Yeah.
And life isn't tied in a bow.
It's not.
But it's that waiting it out, and there is hope.
There is hope. There is. There always is.
Marian Keyes, you're unreal.
I love you. Can I come and live here?
Please.
Thank you so much.
You and Tony, anytime.
This has been such a huge, an honour, a real honour.
This episode of No Filter was brought to you by Westpac, proud supporters of you and all women with their 200 Women project. Find out more at westpac.com.au/200 women. Thank you for listening to No Filter. Isn't she delightful? Didn't you just want her to keep talking in that beautiful Irish accent forever? Since reading her latest book, The Break, and I've been listening in preparation for this interview, I was listening to a lot of her other podcast interviews. She hasn't actually done many podcast interviews. I only found like 1 or 2. So this is probably one of the longest podcast interviews she's ever done. I was just thrilled. And yeah, we did get into some meaty stuff and some funny stuff. And so I've just got this Irish accent in my head, and I'm starting to think in all these Irish phrases and words that she uses, like fecking, she says, and she says banjaxed, which means that something's just sort of broken. And banjoing, as we heard in the conversation. She's just so amazing. She's written so many books. There are many people who don't know Marian Keyes and who aren't familiar with her writing. Oh my God, this is a summer read for you guys. Get stuck in. And there's nothing better than finding an author that you love and then discovering they have this massive back catalogue. I know I felt that way when I discovered Liane Moriarty, and it was like, oh my God, she's got like 7 books I can go back and read. And you'll find the same with Marian. There are very few authors that I reread their books, but there are some of Marian's books that I pick up at least once a year. I will reread one of her books. You can find all of Marian's books at apple.co/Mamamia. That's also where you can find my book and all of our podcasts. Or better still, because a lot of people have been saying they've been having some trouble with the new upgrade with the podcast app in iTunes or on iOS, Apple phone, Mac. What am I talking about? You know, the thing. And it's crashing all the time, I'm finding. But you know what doesn't crash? The Mamamia podcast app. That does not crash. It's just steady and it's stable and it's strong and it's pink, and you've got all our podcasts in one place. And just because it's pink, it doesn't mean it's not serious. It can also be serious and pretty at the same time. That's what we're all about. If you want to, also, can I suggest that you check out Marian's YouTube channel? It's really funny. She calls them short films, which I also adore. And her gorgeous husband, Tony, edits them and films them. And it's just lovely. She's so good in front of a camera. She's just charming and delightful. And it's just like checking in with a friend. I don't subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels, but I just love this. And I also get her newsletter. She does a monthly newsletter. If you want to suggest a guest or ask me a question or leave a comment about how much you love Marian, if you perhaps have an Irish accent and just want to extend this experience a little bit further by leaving us a voicemail message, we would love that. You can call the pod phone on 02 8999 9386 or flick us an email at podcast@mamamia.com.au. Today's show was produced by Eliza Ratliff, who doesn't have an Irish accent, but have you read any of Marian's books? What are you going to read first? You're going to start with Watermelon and work through chronologically. Wow. Her one about rehab, Rachel's Holiday, is fabulous. I mean, a funny book about rehab, but she went to rehab and it's kind of based on her own experience. None have been made into movies, Lies. Very good question. None have. And to me, they are so filmic. I don't even know what the word is, but they are so they would be so perfect for the screen. But look how long it took anyone to discover Liane Moriarty, like her, probably with Marian it's the same as Liane, like her books are probably in development and have been kicking around. It's just criminal that they haven't been adapted into short, maybe not even a movie, maybe a Netflix series. We should get Bruna onto it. No, she's got to make my book into something first. I don't want to distract her. What else have I got to tell you? Oh, Eliza Ratliff is the producer. She's producing on behalf of the Mamamia Women's Network, and the director of podcasts is her boss, Rachel Corbett. I'm Mia Friedman, and I love you, and I will speak to you. I will be in your ears next week. Bye.